Bulbul Singh was born in 1942 in Quetta and educated at St. Lawrence, Sanar, St. Stephen's College, Delhi, and Kansas State University, USA. He has been college teacher and executive in the USA and a marketing and advertising executive with Hindustan Liver and apple orchardist in Kulu Valley, the Valley of Gods, which has been his home for the past 20 years. Bulbul has held readings of his poetry in many countries, including Afghanistan, Iran, Turkey, Greece, Italy, France, Britain, Switzerland, Canada, and the USA. In 1976, he featured on the nationwide American TV program To Tell the Truth and in Ken Casey's All-American Poetry Symposium. In 1981, he participated in Lawrence Ferlinghetti's Artists for Survival, an anti-nuclear event in John Guyonor's Dial a Poem and the Worldwide Habitat Conference in Vancouver. Bulbul Singh has held nearly 40 solo exhibitions of his paintings in India and abroad. He exhibited in London and Washington in 1972, in Los Angeles in 76 and 81, in New York in 1976 and 84, in Hong Kong and Hawaii in 1981, and in Aspen and Geneva in 1983. The genius of Bulbul Singh as a semi-abstract painter is recognized internationally. His collection of poems is Wind-Blown Om and Other Songs, published by Rupa. The poems of this collection are selected and introduced by Juliet Reynolds, a well-known writer and media personality specializing in Indian art and culture. They are accompanied by reproductions of Bulbul's oil paintings, which attest, like his poems, to his passion for nature. We have invited Bulbul Singh and Avtar Singh Judge to discuss the book Wind-Blown Om and Other Songs.
What I would like to ask you is, where did you really start, at your the life's journey which took you to all the various stages which you have beautifully described in your this poem called Wind-Blown Om and Other Songs.
I think my journey really began when I was working in Bombay in Hindustan Lever, and I'm talking about 1964.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1965, India and Pakistan went to war.
Mm-hmm.
My girlfriend in Bombay, she was a Muslim girl.
Mm-hmm.
My parents were very upset by the fact that I was in love with a Muslim girl, even though her mother was a Padma Shri holder and set up things for the physically handicapped. And they disapproved. But when this war started, my heart was broken because I could not make out the insanity of brothers, sisters fighting with each other, the same country not recognizing the fact that it is the same country. And then the poetry came out of me. Before that, I used to write only prose. But when the poetry came out, it talked about love which you can find in life if you live it. Love which you can feel if you can touch it. Love which is there for everyone to have if they can know that that love never changes, because that love is universal, that love is only one. That war brought out this grief, and I started writing. I hadn't painted since I left St. Stephen's and college, and I went to America, where I was teaching American history. I was again writing only prose there, but not painting, because my painting had almost, for a few occasions I painted, but the painting also came. And it was the expression of the creative which was more than the destruction of that war. It was that creative which was always and constant, and that's when my search began for the no change, for that which always remains. It was that Indo-Pakistan war.
Actually, when you were working in Bombay, I mean, from your poems and what I have read about it, it seems that a strange sort of dissatisfaction about your life there, you know, came into your mind and came into your life. And those were the sort of melancholy days, you know. And that you somehow wanted to get out of it and go somewhere to find something which your inner urges were trying to induce in you. So how come you, what sort of dissatisfaction was there with that life in Bombay, you know, where you were moving in the jet set, you know, some of the most famous people were your friends, but then how come you suddenly gave it up and went on a long journey to discover yourself, and you found a novel way of going from Afghanistan to Paris and then to London? What induced you to do that? You know?
I suddenly realized that in the city, I was existing only on name and fame, and I had enough of it.
You had already made your name.
Well, as an artist, I was all right. As a poet, I was great. I mean, as far as people are concerned, and they liked my poetry and they liked my painting. My advertising and marketing promotions were very high. I was with the biggest marketing company in India, Hindustan Lever. Then for advertising for them with Lintas as their director. But it was with emotions that had to do with change. And what the change was that you had the expense account, you had the car, you had the chauffeur, you had the company flat, and the guarantee for your provident fund, pension fund, all the things which your father wanted you to have, which was his main aim. But you suddenly realized that there is something about India which I don't know. And that blank in my knowledge was about meditation. That how to find my peace amongst this stress of the changing world into something which became so blissful that the state became from change into Satchitanand, that which never changed.
Satchitanand.
So in search of that, first not being told anything about it, either by college or by professors or by parents, because India had just become independent, and whatever India had to offer by way of culture was not supposed to be considered of any international value. Yet something was telling me that unless I looked within, I was not going to find myself. And it was only the self that could find itself. And I was fortunate, as you said, I had friends like Kabir and Pratima, and Kabir's mother and father, Baba. And Baba came down to Bombay, and I had written my poems in hospitals, in cafes, in bus stops, and you know. And Baba said, "Bulbul, your title is far away, but what you're looking is far away." And I said, "Yes, Baba, I want to know about meditation." He says, "Kabir's mother is coming, Sister Palmo, Frida. She'll tell you." And Mummy sent me to Goenka ji, who taught me meditation, looking within. Then I knew that if I had to live my life fully, I had to go out from the city. I had to go to where I would be able to do the things that I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
What I wanted was, as I say, fresh air, fresh water, build your house, plant your trees, and live and paint. With that, have sheep, have goats, have cow, and what in those days would be classified as return to nature,
Return to
or,
nature.
or you know, back to nature.
Back to nature, yes.
And it all started, as I say, with that meditation camp, which I attended with Goenkaji. And then I did that hitchhike, where I discovered humanity.
Was Goenkaji then a well-known person? in
No,
this-
he had only 40 students then. It was the second camp that he was holding in India.
I see.
It was only
I see.
after
How
that.
did you come in contact with him?
Sister Palmo, Kabir's mother, she was the head of the Rumtek monastery, and she introduced
Kabir,
me.
the famous son of
Baba Vedi.
BPL Bedi
Yeah.
and Freda Bedi,
Right.
because all of us, I was in Lahore Government College when I first had a chance of meeting them. They were wonderful people, you know,
Yeah.
and such full of love for the people. Now, would you please read us some of your poems
So I was
of
talking
different-
about that one from
of
Afghanistan.
different periods, you know, when you were out on your journey to England, or
Yes.
when you were back in Maharashtra during the famine days, or what you call your poems, wind blown Om, anything out of that?
I will, because I read these poetry in America with Ken Kesey, Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Yeah. When we were
They're big names.
NUG.
We've been hearing about them. And,
Well, I've been fortunate that my poetry has been appreciated by.
wonderful.
I was on to Tell the Truth program also.
Wonderful.
So I've had no problem traveling around the country, or the world.
How do you think it's the poetry is a God's gift, or a man's own cultivation and man's own? I mean, because it's often said that, you know, poetry is inspiration, but then there is also a point of view that poetry is what you observe and want to tell the people. But
If you think of poetry as God's gift, then it is there in everybody. You take the way you look at your house, you take the way you paint your floors, you take the way you even express your love to people. So God's gift is right, you know. My God's gift is that it's an expression which can be made possible. And I think the best one which I like is from Mud Poems, which I wrote about the drought when I came back. And long ago, I heard a song that said, mud fell from heaven, and disbelieved. Once I heard a song that said, the sky came from earth, and disbelieved. Time changes all. Time has changed me. Oh, have I come to know that the mud comes from heaven and heaven from earth?
beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Would you?
And then the first poem of Mud Poems, and that is why I say my body is mud, because it needs the rain, it needs the sun on its face and the mist in the hills. Without these the mud dies and shrinks up the earth. Without these the soul dies. For if the mud is gone, what else remains? And after that, if you go anywhere around the world, like my travel, so the earth is mud, and the mud is me. I and the earth are one. So let me wander, for the land is below, and beating under her is the mantra of the mud, sending vibrations into day. Wind-filled day, blowing the mud in eddies along the dust trail. Desert winds lift the powdered sand and hurl it across great stretches. And everywhere the mud under my feet tells me I am back home. And finally, out of mud man fashioned a prayer to keep the long night lit, and placed it at the foot of God, and it was an everlasting prayer. for it was made of mud, the diya, and the mud was everywhere. So the prayer went from house to house and from God to God and became the first light. The mud diya still keeps the prayers of men for gods, but the diyas are fewer now, and the gods are restless, for the mud lies forgotten at the feet, as men now fashion prayers out of automobiles and forget to walk across mud fields. And today, from skyscraper tops, I look down onto a patch of mud that still remains, and know a sadness in my soul greater than any sadness I've ever known. In building for the future world, dreamers fall by waysides. The mud is raped for concrete shapes to rise and cover the sky and block the earth. What remains of your bones? Endless miles of corridors, endless shafts for elevator doors.
It's beautiful. Excuse me. Well, I would like to know that after all this voyage, where have you come to? What have you discovered? And what would you say about your state of mind? And after all this, what is it that you would like to tell your friends or tell the people, you know, what you have discovered?
My discovery has been that the biggest philosophy contained in the world is in India.
Is in India.
And what it tells you is that you aren't even here.
I see.
There is nothing that is happening except for Sat Chit Anand. There is no change.
Would you like to explain this concept of Sat, Chit and Anand?
I will, to the extent that we are taught here Western education to meet the global village, as we call it, which is on computers and all, and that Western education tells you that there are only three states of consciousness that you exist in, like a trinity, the waking state, the dream state, and the sleep state. Now, the fourth state of consciousness, which is the one which pervades everything, from which all of these states arise, which is known as Turiya, that is only known in India. And for that, to get to the Turiya, to the seed, you have to have Dhyan and Gyan. For Dhyan and Gyan, you need a guru. A guru who will decondition your mind from caste, country, creed, religion
I see.
into realizing your own self, which is universal, all permeating, no death, no life, that which is you and everything that you see. If you can come to that point, then the problem as far as your existence is concerned of life and death is not there.
What I understand is that you have to empty your mind of whatever you have been learning and reach a stage, you know, when you reach that stage which they call Shun, so that you can be one with everybody, one with the universe, one with the nature, one with the humanity, isn't
Yes,
it?
because there is only one. And so that is then borne out in poem meditation, where there is a guru who I met. Maybe I should read something from here,
Where you can read.
because the last poem of that is when you take the mind and you look at the mind, because it's only the self that realizes the self. And the guru, what he taught me was, up in the Himalayas there is a valley called Kulu, Valley of Gods, where the river named after the sage Vyas carries its eternal flow past the ashram of a guru whose name is Swami Sham, that beyond space, who said to me, I know the power of the mind, unwavering like the universe, which is the sovereign secret of meditation, the sovereign secret for all minds to unfold. At his feet I learned the knowledge of truth. Listen, dear one, higher than the states of consciousness you know of waking, deep sleep and dream is the fourth, Turiya, the state that brings
And
peace, love, joy, harmony, freedom, poetry.
Correct.
So it is sovereign, for it is the existence, the highest, the seed. And how do you get it? You get it by looking within.
You get it by looking within.
And the channel opens up, the fourth state becomes apparent. So you never become upset, agitated, worried, tense or weak because of pranic energy. Now as the channel absorbs from the atmosphere, it is stillness to know the peaceful fourth state. The day arrives when samadhi, the state super, the state perfect of consciousness becomes a reality, just
So-
as a child becomes a youth.
So what I understand is that ultimately you have to go inside yourself to reach yourself, to know the truth and to
Yeah. See, there is a whole world in this, inside, a world of immortality and beauty. Amram ham, Madhuram ham. I am immortal, I am blissful. In this world inside is the same from which the source of thought came, the one of pure consciousness, existence and bliss. The source is Sat Chit Anand, the source that exists before any thought. And so it is only the third eye of pure perception that can be opened to take you to a point with the pure source and you are one pure knowledge. You cannot see it like a flower or a shape that moves because knowledge that is pure is without form. It can't be seen,
Well, that
heard,
is
touched,
wonderful.
tasted
That
or
is
smelled,
wonderful.
but experienced only in meditation. The wind picked up, lightning flashed, raindrops fell. Now here the Guru was telling me I could expand my mind's capacity, given the information so necessary to develop my vision to where I could never be held prisoner to the relative field of the world, body and senses. But by becoming detached from this field of existence relative, I could move faster and faster away from the slow-moving phenomenal world to the essence of everything, self-realization. Nothing but manifested form of energy pure. So also consciousness and bliss. Sat Chit Anand, which is the self that I am. I am that.
That explains. Great to be with you. Thanks a lot for telling us and all the people who are watching you about your voyage of discovery. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. My pleasure.